And I am talking with Shane Grover of sales and marketing over at Seawind in Vietnam. And we're really happy to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, River, and hi, everyone.
Let's just get down to it. How many Seawinds are you building per year?
So over the last few years, we've been building an average of about 25 catamarans a year. At our site, we also build the Catamarans. So in total, we're doing about 60 yachts a year. But for our Seawind range, we're doing about 25. And that's probably a good average over the last 20 years as well. So that's a pretty solid number for us. At the moment, though, our sales demand is far greater than that. So we're in the process of sort of a 3 to 5 year plan of doubling and then further expansion from there to keep up with the demand. Obviously, we've got some new models that have come online that again has increased the demand across the range for Seawind.
Fantastic. Yeah, I know. I personally know several people on the wait list, so it's good that you're looking to expand.
Trying to get them all their boats earlier.
Yeah, exactly. So has COVID affected your business at all?
We've been I wouldn't say lucky is necessarily the right word, but there has been, being based in Vietnam where we are, the government here has done a fantastic job of dealing with COVID, so that has had a very positive effect for our business. We've lost 0 days production last year. So they, and basically they just took action when everybody else was thinking this was still not a thing. And I think myself included, thought it was a bit over the top, but then as months progressed, we started realizing no, they did the right thing. And as a result, we put in some strict measures early on, and everybody's complied, and we've been able to continue operating really completely unaffected. The only impact it's had on us, which is the same for everybody, has been the logistics impact of getting materials in, because obviously our suppliers had shutdowns in Europe, America, and elsewhere, and so obviously dealing with those logistics now, when we're planning to build a boat, what used to be a 1 month lead time for something can now be 6 to 8 months, and so that just takes different planning, different management, and understanding that's the way the world is at the moment, and making sure we deal with that. It also has an effect on how you order your boat. We do now need to know the options that we're putting on boats at a much earlier stage. So previously, we were able to make modifications to the build, sort of, in the middle of the build. That's a bit harder now because, not because we can't do them, but typically if we don't have those items in stock, somebody wants a generator 3 months before their boat's about to go out the door, and there's a 7-month lead time, it doesn't work. So it has changed the way we do business, but I would say it's been a change, not for the better or worse. We've managed to come through this with a bit of stability, which has been lucky, but also as a result of some good planning from on many levels.
For sure, right. I mean, you're just taking on the motto of sailing. You're just adjusting your sails and working as
exactly.
things. So, yeah. So how about transitioning from building in Australia to Vietnam? I understand you were part of that transition phase. How was that been?
So that's a while ago now. That was 2010 when I moved to Vietnam and started production up here. Look, it was interesting. We purchased Seawind Catamarans purchased Catamarans in 2010, and that was our entry into Vietnam. And at the time, we had to do that. That was manufacturing in Australia was becoming extremely difficult. Over the last 10 years, all the auto industries left Australia. There's very few boat builders left. It's a difficult place to manufacture. But what was really putting pressure on us was the Australian dollar. So we were building in Australian dollars at the time, and in 2010, the US dollar had passed parity. So what used to be a huge deficit in Australian dollar to US dollar, so we could export to America, suddenly became impossible. You just could not. Our export market from 2000 probably 2008, 9, 10 became non-existent in America. So we lost a significant portion of our production. And then also because of the dollar, imports were coming into Australia at a much lower rate. And the Australian dollar is if you're building purely for the Australian market, it's manageable, but if you're trying to deal on a worldwide stage, it's obviously you'll have some years where it'll be fantastic, and some years it'll be terrible, and we needed a bit more stability than that. So we needed to find a way to have that. Number one was the currency stability, and so in Vietnam, the Vietnam dong is closely tied with the US dollar. Most of our parts come from America or Europe, so most of our purchasing is done on a US dollar base, and it allowed us to therefore set our pricing based on US dollars and not have these crazy fluctuations year on year. So that was the reason for the move, and the process was it was interesting. So we came here again. We started with Catamarans, which was an established business, a much smaller business than what we are today. But we came in with a good team of at all levels: the management team, the production team. Everybody was here, ready to go, and we could scale from that. But definitely coming from Australian boat building to building in this environment, this is far more a production environment. When we were building in Australia, we had most of our employees were shipwrights, and it was a sort of thing where you had less documentation of those builds, and somebody wanted a toilet mounted a foot to the right. You'd say, Jim, put the toilet in a foot to the right, and it would be done. But there'd be no documentation for it. You could also, a lot of the build was that way. But it would also mean that when Jim moved into a different department or left, and John came in, he would install that toilet a different way. He would follow, so it was definitely based on the builder's standards as opposed to the company standards. So when we came here, it was a lot of our work was on setting those standards, getting the documentation in place. The documentation and work procedures that we have today are 10 times what we had when we were in Australia. And that's very much the difference. Here we have to work with engineers and technicians to design how to move that toilet a foot to the right, make the drawing, make it very clear before it goes out on the production floor. Our workers are very good, but they just have a smaller scope of skills. So we'll have people who will install toilets or do plumbing, and that's what they do. That's fine. In Australia, most of our guys could build the whole boat themselves, so they were shipwrights. They could do everything. So we have more people with a much narrower scope of skill here. We also find that our workers have a much higher appreciation for their work than what we did when we were in Australia. And I was the same in Australia. If you did the same job, if you installed that toilet every week for 3 months, eventually you'd say, I need to move. I need to do something different. Whereas here, our guys don't like to move. They really take pride in that. They're the guy that installs the toilet on the Seawind 1160. That's my job. I don't want anybody else touching that job. That's mine. So that actually is also helpful, because it means that the skills are constantly getting better and better in that area with those people who wanted it there. So it was definitely, but from our side, it was more of we had to change the way that we thought and approached it, as opposed to coming in and saying, we need everybody to do things differently. This is how we did it in Australia. That doesn't work. You have to work on this is how the skill sets work here, and what do we need to do to tap into those skill sets to make this work. And really, again, that came down to having the right procedures, the right standards. If everybody knows, if they're clear, people know what they need to do, everything works well all the time. You only have problems when there's ambiguity in what it is that I expected it to be like this and he expected it to be like that. So it's getting rid of those loose expectations and setting very clear standards. Yeah. So ultimately, the end result is the quality that we're producing here is much better than it was when we were in Australia. We're able to put more labour into the build, we're able to put more time detailing, and we made a conscious decision when we moved here that we had to increase the quality. We knew that if we built the same quality, an identical boat, and put it at the same boat show, that people would criticise the boat that we were building in Vietnam versus in Australia. So we consciously said we have to increase the quality. And I'm not talking the build quality. The build quality is the same. You know, everything's engineered. Nothing there changes. But certainly putting extra, you know, finishing things to a higher degree, polishing, you know, removing flanges and you know, taping, you know, areas together and getting a seamless finish as opposed to having a silicon white and things like that. We took the finish to a much higher standard.
Right. Are there any challenges in building smaller catamarans versus the larger, like 1600s, whether it's construction, marketing, finances?
Yeah, interestingly, in building a bigger boat, yes, there's more complication, but typically it's because of the systems. You could build a bigger boat, you could scale a small boat and make it big, and it doesn't necessarily have to become more complex. But that's not what happens. You get a bigger boat, and suddenly you want a dishwasher on it, but you didn't have any small boat, and you want a washing machine, and you want, yeah, the systems all become more complex. That is really the main significance in going large versus smaller. Everything else, though, the process of, you know, start to finish of working with the customer on an order, through delivering the boat, hanging on the boat, it's not entirely scalable. The effort involved in a small boat versus a big boat is fairly similar. But of course, in the building process, the hours are dramatically different, the material costs are dramatically different. Yeah, as I'm sure you've heard, but with each foot, the cost goes up an exponential amount. And a lot of it's because typically you can't just take a 40-foot boat and make it 45-foot by stretching it. If you could, no problem, it wouldn't cost that much. But you also don't really get those gains. You don't do that. You go, oh, it's now 45 foot, but I want a bit more space inside, not just in the bow. So you make it wider, and all this then makes it heavier. So then the equipment's not up to scratch, the rigging's no good, and the hardware's no good. Now it has to go up to the next grade, and it's. I'm sure there's limits where it's not entirely linear. It must go up in steps where you've got a range where you can get away with you know, this model windlass and this model winch. And then you get over this weight or this length, and it's typically weight as opposed to length. So you can have a bigger boat with the same hardware that you would have on a smaller boat if the weight is equal. But typically the weight does increase with length. But yeah, so to answer your question clearly, basically yes, on a bigger boat it is more complex, but it's mainly because of the systems involved as opposed to the lamination, the construction. That's all very, very similar practices, just on a larger scale.
Where do you see the future of Seawind? Any secrets you can tell us, or any vision that you have?
We're on a mission to be the go-to couples boat. So we don't want to build boats for the China market. And not necessarily boats just to you know, go for a day sail on. What we want to build is boats that, and of any size, not just our bigger boats, but of any size. We want to build our boats so that people can take them. That can be their dream boat to eventually retire on and sail around the world if they want to. That's what we want to be. We want to have the best products for that mission. And I'm not sure if you've seen the Seawind 1370 that we've just released, followed up from the 1600 a few years ago. And these are all following that brief very strictly. So that means that performance is not a race boat, but it has to sail well enough so that in light airs, and most of the time you're going to be sailing in light airs. In light airs, you can sail close to wind speed. You don't have to run motors to get around. And most importantly, everything holds together. Structurally, the boat needs to be sound, it needs to be rigid, and you need to feel safe on board.
What kind of feedback are you getting from new customers on their boats?
Look, I think we get typically we get good feedback. I think by the time somebody has bought a Seawind, typically they understand it. So they've already gone out and test sailed, or they've chartered it, but they know what they're getting at. Most of our customers are, I think, quite well educated on the market, so they've probably done comparisons on more than 3 to 5 boats, and they've already understood that they like this on this boat, they don't like that on that boat, and they've worked their way down to find that and everything's a compromise. There's more customers than there are boats. So there's always going to be something that you do like and you don't like. And it's about finding that right balance where you've got the things that you really have to have, and you're okay to compromise on those other things. And everybody will make different compromises. But we do find that most of our customers have already done quite a bit of research. And I don't think many people are just buying a Seawind because it was the first thing they saw. They've already looked at everything else, and they're coming in and they're making the conclusion that this is the right thing. So when they get their boats, I think typically there's not many surprises there. They're getting what they were expecting. What we do get good feedback on though is just the service side of things, joining family, we're not just trying to build boats and send boats around the world and never see them again. We have good relationships with our owners and as to our dealers and owners to owners, and I think that's an important aspect of owning your boat. Obviously, not everybody wants to be involved. Some people might just want to take the boat and go off sailing and never talk to anybody ever again. But I think most people do like to have that support network available as well. And we do typically get good feedback on that.
And you do have a very good, robust group on Facebook that I'm actually a part of, the official Seawind owners group. So that's quite helpful in figuring little things out that most people wouldn't. So yeah, lots of support all over the world. So do you want to let us know where we can find out more about Seawind catamarans?
Yeah, exactly. So www.seawindcats.com, that's the place to go. Obviously 2021 is going to be a bit of a funny year like last year. We don't really know, we don't have locked in dates for boat shows and things coming up yet. In Europe, we've just heard the Le Grand Mott boat show is being delayed till the end of April, but it's still planned to go ahead. So if that goes ahead, we will be at Le Grand Mott in Europe. And likely the next official boat show in the States will be the Annapolis Sailboat Show in October. So that's what we're expecting at the moment. So if you want to see some boats in the flesh, they're the places to go. Of course, any of our dealers in Florida, in Annapolis, in Massachusetts, in Seattle, in California, have boats available, and they can also take you for demo sails and show you our various models. So that's all. If you can't wait until the next boat show, give one of our dealers a call, and they'll be able to get you out on the water.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Shane, for talking with us. Really appreciate it. Again, I'm River Braun with catamaransight.com, and we'll be back next time.